time. It's our time, my friends. Time for millions of maturepreneurs, 55 plus, who are hashtag not done by a long shot, to revolutionize how we lead, do business, and innovate our world. I'm your host, Jeanette Anderson, and welcome to my conversations with fascinating people who would rather inspire than retire. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Maturepreneur podcast. I am your hostess, Jeanette Anderson. Today, I'm here with Charlotte Mitchell from all the way around the other side of the globe. Welcome, Charlotte.
Thank you.
Lovely to welcoming people from tomorrow. So where you are, it's Thursday, yes? And where it's
Wednesday. Yes, it is. Yes, Thursday morning.
Yes. So tell people where you are.
So I'm based in Sydney. So that's where my practice is at the moment.
Okay, awesome. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about self-sabotage and the dream detour. Why we block what we want. Now, you know, here we roll with discussing the inner and outer game of life and business. So, because if we don't get what's working, the 4 inches between our ears working, then the business doesn't work, the dream doesn't happen. Whatever it is that you're trying to make come into reality doesn't happen because we get in our own way. So we're going to be talking about how to not do that, how to be aware of what's standing in the way of your goals, and what some of those hidden fears and beliefs might be that got installed that aren't serving you and what you can do about it. So important conversation. I'm glad you're here, Charlotte. And I'm going to introduce her formally, as you know. Then I'm going to ask her for the juicy details behind the scenes, some shocking tidbit from her life or something. I always ask for shocking. I never get shocking, but I ever live in hope that someday someone's going to tell me, that they secretly, work on the side as a dominatrix or something. But in the meantime, let me tell you about Charlotte. Charlotte Mitchell is a world-renowned medical herbalist, biofield healer, intuitive life coach, author, and mentor with over 35 years of experience in holistic healing. Holistic healing. A graduate of the School of Herbal Medicine in Tunbridge Wells, UK. She has lectured internationally and now practices in Sydney, Australia. I was wondering about your accent because it's not definitively Australian, so it's definitely more UK. Okay. In 2005, she founded Consummate Health, a holistic practice and product line rooted in herbal medicine and energy healing. Charlotte specializes in releasing emotional and energetic blocks. Her restorative work empowers clients to heal physically, mentally, and emotionally, helping them reconnect with their intuition, vitality, and life purpose. That's important work. I love the reconnection with vitality and life purpose for sure. It's always kind of odd and weird sitting and listening patiently while someone reads all about you, isn't it? It's just kind of weird.
It always is.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and smile and nod until we're finished. All right. So on that note, tell us something about you we would never find on your website, maybe something even your friends don't know, or that your clients would never guess about you.
What is it? Let me think. I would say I am also an artist, which doesn't appear on my website at all. Mm-hmm. And it's quite an interesting story, really. At school, I have to say, I was a failed artist. I wasn't good at all. And I remember when I was about 14 in art class, the art teacher saying, just looking at me, actually, not being rude in any way, but, just that sort of very pitying look, she can't paint. Oh. And it was years later, I'd already started my practice in the UK and I travelled to Zimbabwe. And I had a camera and I excitedly got into photography and I was photographing, the whole country. We travelled around Zimbabwe. I was travelled with friends. And I remember just feeling excited about the photographs and also the colours, the colours of Africa. It was just amazing. And when I got home, suddenly I had this urge to paint. And I thought, but I have no idea how to even draw. So how do I do this? And we happened to have a friend of my sister's staying at the time with us. And I said to her, she's a fantastic artist, fantastic. So I said to her, Candida, I want to paint. And she went, there are no barriers to Candida. So she just went, oh, yes, come on then. And she picked up a rug from the middle of our sitting room floor. Yeah. She got some pastels that she had and, obviously art paper. And then off we went into the back garden, sat on this rug. She also picked a teapot from the cupboard, picked a couple of mugs, put them down on the rug as well, and said, no, just draw. And so I started, and I thought, gosh, what on earth am I doing here? But funnily enough, I just thought, okay, just go with it. But from there, I started painting, and then, had quite a few exhibitions over time. So yes, that is not on my website.
Okay, so there's a bunch of lessons in there. One is, to your art teacher and their funny look at you. Yes, it's interesting. Many of us have stories of either a teacher who said or did something that boosted us in a direction or shut us down in a direction. And I don't know that people really realize how much power they have with those little looks or those little comments or whatever. I remember I was in the hospital a lot when I was a child, and I was getting my tonsils out, and I was in I was maybe, I don't know, 3, 4, pre-op room and the beds with the bars, the rails that they pull up so that you don't fall out or run away. And I remember being terrified. And there was a little boy beside me, about my age, crying his heart out. And I remember to this day, I don't remember much of my childhood, but I remember to this day, the feeling of longing that I could do that, because that was exactly how I felt, but I was just so scared. It was trapped. I couldn't get it out. And I was like, oh, I wish I was you, kind of thing. And a nurse came in and looked at him and said, now stop it. Why don't you be brave like this little girl? And I was like, I don't know about him, but I've been in therapy over that comment for quite a while, because that taught me that, what that said was you shouldn't have emotions. You shouldn't express them. You should shut them down and so forth. And I don't know, I'm sure that did not help him either, because, it's not brave to cry. Yes, it is. So let's just kind of give a little one finger salute to all the nurses and teachers and people and, ministers, whoever, who said anything to you at some point and said, you can't, you aren't, you don't, you shouldn't, or you should, or whatever. And happily let that go, because it leaves such a wake behind the boat, in our life in terms of its impact, which we're going to be talking about, is what creates those initial limiting beliefs that we have and so forth. So I have to ask, before we leave the genesis of your story, and by the way, everybody needs a Candida. Is her name Candida?
Charlotte.
No, the lady.
Oh, Candida. Oh, yeah, Candida. Absolutely. Oh, we do. And the thing is, it was just so joyous. And so it was just expected that I would be able to paint. Or be able to draw. And I mean, what a lovely way to enter that world.
Exactly.
It was marvelous.
And to just say, okay, let's do this. And she grabbed a rug and off she went, and she created an environment, and she just said yes, which was a glorious thing. It was not only did she expect you to be able to paint, but she just said yes to loving and supporting you and making it a fun adventure. So what a great teacher she is as well. So when you were in Zimbabwe, did you do the zip line from Zambia to Zimbabwe across the river?
Well, actually, I didn't. We didn't. But what was very strange was we were flying from London, Heathrow, and our plane was cancelled in Heathrow. So we had to stay overnight there, and we took time to get to Zambia. We were transitioning through Zambia, but we were flying into Lusaka. But the very strange thing is, we were already late, obviously, getting to Lusaka. Then we were going on to Harare. But when we got to Lusaka, there was about 40 of us on this flight from Heathrow. And we were lining up to get our boarding pass to go, get onto the plane to go to Harare. And the plane left without us. So, just left. So there were 40 of us standing there going, what are we doing here? And the funny thing it was amazing because we were flying with Air Zambia, which quite frankly later went out of business, very actually short time later. And I thought, okay, maybe that has something to do with it because they had to put us up in a hotel, 40 of us in a hotel, because there wasn't a flight to Harare for 3 days. So we had this most marvelous time in Lusaka, and we happened to have some friends there as well. So we had a whale of a time, signing off. Oh yes, I'll have this, there's some champagne, or I'll have, prawns or lobster or whatever it was. So no, I didn't do that, but I did have a lovely experience.
It's like a great experience.
Exactly.
Well, as far as I know, it might be, actually, I don't know this for sure, but it's certainly the only zip line I've done from one country to another. And I have to get you go across the bridge with your passport. And so you have to literally do kind of a little border check to go across the bridge to get onto the zip line, which is just off to the side of the bridge. And then you zip line back to Zimbabwe, across a gorge, deep gorge, where the river normally is. In this case, it was very, very low, and the falls were very low. It was beautiful, but it was scary. I've done zip lines in 4 different countries so far. That's something that people probably wouldn't expect, but that one kind of counts as 2 countries because it was from one to the other, but really it's one. Anyway,
yeah. We did see the falls. We did but from the Zimbabwean side. So we went up and saw the falls, but unfortunately, no, I didn't have that experience.
Okay, well, next time. Then when you go back, you can do that. Absolutely. All right, so I'm just going to pause for a moment because I have to cough. So hold on. All right, there we go. That's better. So I've coughed my little heart out, and now we're ready to rock and roll. So tell me how you got into this work in the first place.
Fortuitously in some ways, and maybe you can say, it was my destiny. I planted my first herb garden when I was 12. And I have no idea why I did that. I had come across this amazing herbal book, and it had lots of recipes in it, to do with, making beauty products rather than actually medicinal preparations and things. But it just, I don't know, it inspired me. And so I decided, and also it had a section in it. Actually, the first section was about growing herbs. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to grow a herb garden. And we lived in the country in Norfolk in the UK. And so, I had a space, there was enough space. And so I created my own herb garden. And my family just didn't really understand me at all. It was just like, what are you doing? And at the same time, I was also interested in health foods and things like that. So I would drink things like, cider vinegar and honey, or molasses and lemon, slightly weird things at the time. And I was the only person in the family that did that. Yeah. So that's how it started. And I just continued with my passion for herbs. Okay. And so that's how it began. And so
was that something that you then transitioned directly from being a youth or a teenager into that, or did you go by a circuitous route?
I went straight into it. So
wow.
I worked, so when I was 16 and I was studying, doing A-levels, I actually worked for, again, an interesting lady. She was an actress in the UK, but her grandmother had left her some recipes of how to make herbal creams and lotions and potions and things like that. And so she decided that she wanted to set up a business making herbal preparations. And it was, it was cosmetics, so shampoos and toners and cleansers and all these different things. So she had a shop in London, she had a shop locally where I lived. And so I worked with her on a Saturday for probably a couple of years. And then, yes, I went straight into herbal medicine. So from school, I started off with the humanities at A-levels and transitioned to science because I needed that to get into the School of Herbal Medicine. That's been my career from beginning to end.
Wow, I think you may be the only person I've ever met that had the same career now as what they did when they started out back in university or their college days or whatever. I can't think of anyone else who's had the same career the whole time. That's fascinating. Okay, so tell me, that's a very abiding passion. So tell me a little bit more about the coaching work and how you got into that, and how did that come about out of the work that you were doing with the, medicinal and non-medicinal herbal work?
So I set up practice in the UK, and I had a practice in Norfolk for 10 years, and that was purely herbal medicine. But I actually shared a room, or my room, in the clinic with a healer. And oh, lovely, with a healer. And so I started to get used to her giving me healing. I would give her herbs. And initially, I didn't really understand healing. It wasn't obviously my area of expertise. But obviously, I started to learn and get more interested in that side of things. Mm-hmm. I think I've always naturally loved teaching. So I love talking about herbs, and I love imparting that type of knowledge, but also getting information back from others as well. So, it's this lovely reciprocal sort of give and take of knowledge. And I've always loved that. So I think I naturally fell into, doing lots of workshops, and I ended up working particularly in Asia, and working firstly with herbal medicine to an extent, but also because of the language barriers, because it was Japan and my Japanese is not very good.
Right.
I started to use healing much more. I started to develop my own healing method and coaching methods. Of course, with coaching, you have a translator, so that's easier. With herbal medicine, it's hard because with the translator, I was concerned that I would get the right information. Say a translator made a mistake and said somebody had high blood pressure when they had low, that type of thing. So I went much more into the healing, and I realized that it worked brilliantly well with the herbal medicine. And then I started teaching in those areas.
Fascinating. So we were going to talk today about, both your journey as an entrepreneur, and Maturepreneur, and what's changed over the past 35 years for you, but also some of the practicalities of this work. I house and pet sit, and there's a pet here who absolutely loves to come up and get loved up while I'm doing podcasts, particularly if I'm on the camera, so must he be. Anyways, this is Max. So tell me a little bit more about the topic of the beliefs and the how they impact us. Of course, obviously, lots of people are aware that we have limiting beliefs or hidden fears, and that we get born with, or that can get installed when we're very young, that sabotage our dreams and our desires. So how does that end up happening, and what can we start doing about that?
Okay. Until the age of maybe 7, and some people say 10, we basically download all the information that we get from around us. So whether it's a parent, whether it's a teacher, whether, whoever it is, we download that information without a filter. So by the age of, say, 10, our head is chock-a-block with other people's beliefs, ideas, thoughts, view of life. Mm-hmm. And then, quite frankly, it takes us quite a long time often to work out what our beliefs are, or what we are as a person. So I think we start off at a disadvantage in some ways. And then, of course, we go to school, and our schooling tends to reinforce, certain cultural ideas or belief systems. So that's where it starts. How do we do something about it? I think, first of all, recognizing that a lot of our ideas are not ours. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. I think if you come from that premise, or you understand from that premise, then you've got you can do something about it. But otherwise, you're thinking you're giving your objective opinion, and it's unique to you. And I would say often it probably isn't.
Exactly. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned when I was taking personal development facilitation and doing the personal growth work, etc., was that just because it sounds like my voice in my head, that it's not necessarily my voice. It might be my voice, but it's not necessarily my idea or my belief. But we mistake it because we think it's in my head, therefore it must be mine. It's in my voice, therefore it must be mine. But it's not necessarily. Just because it's our voice doesn't mean it's our truth or our perspective. So what are some ways that people can start to be aware of what is theirs and what's not?
I think one of the first ways is to stop any mind chatter. Because most of us, our brain is going non-stop. We're constantly thinking. We're not in the present moment. We're either in the past or in the future. We're thinking what's going to happen, what's coming up, or, oh, yes, what happened yesterday, and it might be a lovely memory. It might be something that you're trying to sort of resolve, but you're not in the present moment. So I think getting into the present moment, coming into the present moment is a good thing. And I think that's where practically you can use herbs, you can use oils, you can, use grounding techniques. There are many different ways that you can bring yourself or help to bring yourself into the present moment. So I think that's where you start.
And so you mentioned grounding techniques. Let's do one now. Or what's one that people can do right now while they're listening to this to just get really present with themselves and with their bodies?
Well, one which I think is pretty common, but it works brilliantly. It's, it works every time, is the tree root grounding method. So even if you're not outside, I mean, obviously it would be lovely if you could throw your shoes off and just go outside and be, on the grass or on the sand or something like that. That's pretty easy and a great way to do it. But say you're inside, what can you do? So what you do is just take a nice deep breath. Just allow your body to soften. Just be aware of your breath, and just come into your body. How is it feeling? Just start bringing your concentration, your observation, your presence into your body. And then what you do is you're going to use your imagination. So just imagine that you have tree roots growing from the soles of your feet down through the earth into the core of the earth. And you imagine those tree roots just spreading out, and they're anchoring you into the earth, just anchoring you into the earth. And then when you feel that they've spread out sufficiently, then breathe in the earth's energy up through the tree roots, up into your body, up through your legs, up into your torso. Feel it in your chest now, up through your throat, up to the top of your head. Then bring that breath, that stream of light, that stream of earth energy, down from the top of your head, down to your shoulders and out through both arms, out through the fingers. And then just take another deep breath and imagine that breath or stream of light or stream of earth energy going back down through your body into the earth, and you're anchoring down into the earth. And then just do that a couple more times in your own pace, just to make sure you feel really centered and balanced and really grounded.
That's lovely and helped me with my coughing, which is part of my hidden agenda. But it's, closed eye meditations always sound better with an accent. I know you don't think you have an accent, but from our perspective, you have an accent. That's lovely. Thank you. And yes, it does bring you more present into, or brought me more present into my body. And in our body, then we can be more present to what's going on around us. We think we are all the time, but we're not really. So
no, we're often not. You drive down the road and you just think, oh, you're thinking of something else and you've forgotten that, the last 3 minutes that you've been driving. So we're often distracted.
Yeah. And automatic pilot, so yeah, we get home and we just like, oh, how did I get here? So Piet, oh, he loves to rub the computer, especially when I'm trying to record. Anyway, so the thing that I often tell my clients and myself is that, essentially we're making it all up. So we might as well make up a better story. Like all of our perspective, all of our perception, we like to think it is just what is. But if you've got 3 people in a room for a meeting, you're going to get 3 different interpretations of how that meeting went, right? And they're all in the same room with the same experience, but 3 different versions of it. So we definitely see the world through our filter. How do we, so what are some of the techniques that you use for making up a better story? So let's say we've got, many of the people listening here are trying to calculate or figure out what's next. They might be transitioning out of a long-time corporate job. They're rewriting their future. And we, in that process, often need to rewrite scripts from the past, almost always, because what we're brought up with is, you go to school, you get a good job, you climb the corporate ladder, you get married, have 2.5 kids and a picket fence, then you retire and you go off and knit and play pickleball or whatever. That's the story and the expectation, but that is so 1954 and not the case now. But we think that that's how it should be. We don't really know how else to tell a new story. So many of the times when I'm dealing with, older people who are reinventing themselves, when you say, what do you want or what do you like? That's such a foreign question that they haven't asked themselves for so long because it's always been about other people. What are some of the things that you would advise for people who are trying to figure out, what do I want? Where am I at? And how do I tap into what my dreams and desires actually are? Because, before we can sabotage them, we got to know what they are. So let's talk about how do we know what they are?
Yes, it's true. Well, I'm going to probably start in quite a strange place, but I think you need to be physically healthy and your brain needs to be functioning. Because, say, for example, you're drinking, 5 cups of coffee a day. You're not drinking water, you're dehydrated, you've got no energy. It's very difficult then for your brain or your mind to function. It's not even your brain really, but your mind to start to understand what you want to be doing and how you want to do it. So I would say physically, think about getting yourself well. Definitely hydrate because it allows you to be able to think more clearly, right? So maybe go for a couple of days of some juices in the morning or a smoothie or something that feeds your brain. I've just done a series of talks, and actually I'm half in the middle of them, but half done, on the gut. And if your gut is not healthy, it's going to be difficult for you to have the energy and the wherewithal to be able to move forward and fulfill your dreams. So I think start there. That's the first thing. The second thing is you can, for example, use that beautiful time where you're just falling asleep at night, where your brain is going from, your beta brainwave function, which is sort of the, which we're in now, where we're talking and we're sort of quite active, down into the alpha, which is more the meditative state, then down into theta, which is deep meditation and sort of on the border of falling asleep. Use that alpha and beta time where you're just falling to set an intention. So to say to yourself, ask the question that you want answered. And then either you might get it in a dream, you might get it by meeting someone who says something and you think, oh, that's exactly the way I want to go, or this is the group I want to spend time with, or this person I want to spend time with because they're inspirational to me. And I think that's another thing that takes us on to spend time with people who inspire you, because if they're doing what they're doing, it rubs off. We know that everything, as Tesla said, is energy, vibration, and frequency. So if you're in the same frequency as other people who are understanding that life is here to fulfill your dreams, life is here to experience, all the gamut of possibilities, then you're going to then more likely follow in that path as well.
I love writing down the writer downers, I call them. Life is here to fulfill your dreams. I'm not sure that, that everybody consciously thinks about that or thinks that there are people who think life is here to thwart me or to penalize me or various things, but this is a much more productive and happy thought. Life is here to fulfill my dreams. So
yes.
Getting around people that inspire you is certainly very important, because when we're around people who say yes to themselves, then we are more likely to say yes to ourselves. Your example was a beautiful one of the person who said, oh, yes, you want to be an artist? Great. Let's go be an artist right now. Let's go do it right now. Not someday when, not go to school and learn and then you can be an artist, but like, let's go plop ourselves down on a rug outside and be an artist. So I think that's a great example of the importance of being around people who are saying yes to themselves and to their lives and to their dreams. It gives us permission to say yes to ours. So what about when self-doubt creeps in? Because that's often a big thing for many people. I don't know if I can do this. I'm too old. I'm this, I'm that, all of these limiting beliefs. That's often the case for my listeners, and our demographic is, I'm supposed to be out to pasture, which makes me wild. Cows are put out to pasture, not people. Thank you very much. And so how do we deal with that self-doubt? And that happens at every age and stage, but specifically at this particular age and stage, that self-doubt that we still have value to offer. What are some ways to think about that and address that?
The thing is that how we live or how our life shows up for us, can we say even, is often due to repetitive content. So what are we listening to? What are we watching? What's most repetitive in our life? So say, for example, you might not be somebody that watches the news that much. It might be not your bent, but say your partner does. And so they're constantly listening to the news. It's, doom and gloom. And it's like, oh, well, it's a celebration of people who failed in a way. I know that sounds strange, but, it's catastrophizing, isn't it? Yeah. So when something goes wrong, it's like, oh, my God, and it's all this great spray of information and, and whatever. When do we get the good luck story or even the positive, transformational story? And I remember when I was growing up, I didn't grow up with a television, actually, and I'm sort of glad I didn't. I'm really glad now. At the time, it was a little bit awkward because I never knew anything about the programs, and so my friends would be talking about them, and I'd be thinking, I have no idea what you're talking about. I used to read instead. But I'm so glad that I didn't have it, but I do remember the odd time I did watch the news as I was growing up. There was always at the end a couple of sort of lovely stories where they'd found a cat in the tree, or somebody had actually made it and done really well. And now I hardly ever see it. My husband sometimes watches the news, and if I happen to catch it, there's nothing positive about it. So if you're surrounded by that all the time, even when you're going shopping or whatever, you're hearing all this negativity, it's very difficult to escape that. So I would say that to help your self-confidence and your ability to move forward positively and fulfill those dreams, you need to start listening to repetitive content that says you can make it. That it is possible, that you are very powerful, and we can create the most extraordinary things. It's incredibly how powerful we are, but we're usually told we're not. We need to be dependent or this. No, yes, you need support, but why on earth do you need dependency? So I think, yes, I would say it comes down to repetitive content. Choose what you listen to, choose what you watch, choose who you speak to, and choose your thoughts.
And choose how you speak to yourself, right? You're absolutely in the framing of that. And I know some people who are listening are from the baby boom generation, Gen Xers, a little less so. But while we did grow up with affirmations and, Louise Hay and that kind of thinking, it still was woo-woo and fringe. And for many people who are older, it may not be part of their everyday natural way of thinking in the world yet, but there is an incredible power in how we say what we say. And like you said, what we input, garbage in, garbage out. It's actually just a programming term, right? And it's true when you program a program, and it's true when you program a person. What is your, I don't know, proof that affirmations, that positive self-talk, that these things work? How do we know that we've got a subconscious that can be programmed? How do we know that?
Okay, so let's take emotion, because every single thing is vibration. So how do we know that? Well, you can measure it. So, for example, I'm very interested in the science of energy, because I think sometimes it's difficult to believe it because it's invisible. But then on the other hand, when you think that, you switch, you turn on a light switch and then the light turns up, it's suddenly the room is lit, and yet you can't see that electricity, running along the cable. So it's a similar thing to us and our bodies. Mm-hmm. But science is catching up with what those of us who are mystics have known for a long time. And that is that we are energy. We are energy beings. So one of the things I talk a lot about and lecture on is the biofield. So the energy field that surrounds us, but also sort of penetrates into our bodies as well. And that can be measured. So it's measured by something called a biowell. And so you get a picture of it. And we know that looking at how you feel, what you think, and that type of thing will affect the biofield. Even things like, for example, a mobile phone. If you have a mobile phone and you hold it to one's ear for a long, long time, then you notice that when you take pictures of and I put my phone quite a long way away from me, and it's off anyway. But then what happens is the biofield becomes unbalanced. So you can see that happening. Also, the other thing as well, they've done tests on emotions, because again, emotions are frequency, just like thoughts are. And they found with one experiment, they took some DNA from an individual and put it into a test tube. And then they put the test tube in a different room. So it's a long way away from the individual. And then they asked the individual to think happy thoughts. Mm-hmm. And they checked the DNA. And they found that the structure of the DNA, which we know is a helix, relaxed. Whereas when they asked the individual to feel angry or, get frustrated thoughts, the DNA contracted. So we've got a lot of science to show that, emotions impact not only us, but also people around us, the world around us. Thoughts are exactly the same. So it's an exciting time, really, because we know a lot about the science behind energy, light. We are light beings, for example. You can measure the light that we emit using photo multipliers. So there are many ways now that we can measure what's happening in the lab.
Interesting. So you must have been, as a forerunner of this and doing this for as long as you've done it, I would imagine you came up against resistance initially and lots of poo-pooing and a lot of skepticism in your career. What's shifted for you in terms of your work 30 years ago, 20 years ago to now? What's different for you in your business?
That's an interesting one, because I also believe, and I think this is a very powerful principle, that yes, we have lessons. So we have resistance, we meet resistance for us to learn. But I also think that we can circumnavigate the resistance as well. So, for example, when I started practicing in the UK, I actually took over from this herbalist who had been an accountant. And I remember, I don't know why I wanted to go to this clinic, but intuitively, I decided I would go to this clinic. I didn't know anything about it. Something just went, I think I was driving past it, and I thought, they said, stop, go into this clinic. So I went in and I said, do you have any positions for herbalists? And they said, no, we have one already, but he's actually here today. Would you like to speak to him? And so I went and spoke to him. And the man was terribly depressed, honestly. And he said, I spent 5 years learning to be a herbalist. I was already an accountant. And he said, I can't make any money with herbal medicine. And I'm just about to give up. Honestly, he was really, really very off-putting, actually. Well, it could have been off-putting for me because it was like, this is the wrong career. You've chosen the wrong career. So funnily enough, he did leave, and I worked at that clinic for 10 years. But I decided at the beginning I was only going to work 2.5 days a week because I had so many other interests as well. And it was just the way I wanted to do it. I always made enough money. I always, had what I needed as a herbalist. People came to me, whatever. So I think sometimes it's the way you approach things that sort of makes the difference. Now, when have I had more problems? Not at the beginning of my career, but when COVID came, I was working in Asia. And then suddenly I was meant to be talking at a big conference in Tokyo. And suddenly, of course, everything shut down, locked down, and I couldn't travel. And then it was like, okay, so what do I do now? Because the Japanese didn't, they're much better now, but they didn't really work online. And so I'd suddenly lost my career. I almost had to start again. So I would say that was my most difficult time, reinventing and transforming myself and thinking, oh, I've got to sort out my website and I've got to sort out this. And it's taken a few years, but I think being agile and realizing that sometimes you just have to change and go with the things that are working, and sometimes use your intuition to work out what your best path is, how to circumnavigate either resistance or problems.
Yes, I love the phrase being agile, psychologically agile and kind of emotionally resilient and so this is going to sound like perhaps an odd question, but what is a great herb or herb that supports psychological agility, that supports us in being more open-minded, more confident, more brave? Is there something in terms of what we can do physically that really supports that? It might be an herb, it might be something else besides water and hydration.
Exactly. I mean, there are so many. That's what's marvelous about it. So one herb I use a lot is valerian. Valerian is a funny herb. It smells terrible. Cats love it, but it doesn't really smell very nice to us. But what it's very good at is just taking that edge off stress. And most of us are rushed. We're busy. And that doesn't allow us to tune in and work out our path or the best way to navigate forward. So valerian is one. Also, we have a class of herbs called the adaptogens. And the adaptogens are herbs that allow us to really adapt to stress, which is why they're called adaptogens. And so those are things like ginseng, for example, licorice and things like that can work really well to actually help stabilize your nervous system. So there are many ways of doing it. Another way to do it is to support the nervous system with something like lavender. And lavender, I know, probably tastes a little bit strange as a tea, but it's very easy to take and it's very supportive of the nervous system. So there are lots of different herbs that you can use.
Is there something besides ginseng and licorice, both of which I hate the taste of?
Oh, do you hate the taste of those ones?
Yeah.
Yes.
As an adaptogen.
Yes. So you could go for something like withania, which you could try that one, or maybe have a mix that's just going to support your nervous system. So something like skullcap, melissa, lavender, and chamomile, maybe. A nice mix of something like that would help. Or if you're not really a tea person, how about essential oils? Because some of the essential oils, they've done a lot of research on essential oils, and they've done a lot to show that some of them, for example, let's think of them, rose, geranium, lavender, things like that, even cedarwood, they all help to lower the brainwave frequency. So you go more into alpha brainwave frequency. But interestingly, when you do that, you become more efficient. You waste less energy on the stress. which is really helpful.
Which I think makes sense both physiologically and also psychologically. Often the more we slow down, the more we speed up, the more we get done, the more we accomplish, the faster we go, the behinder we get often. So I think that fits and very well psychologically. How would people, I'm going to switch tracks a little bit again. How do people find a good healer or person to work with who can help them with these kinds of things? What's a good way to selection criteria, a way to know? Because there's a lot of people who call themselves healers. Some are good, some are not. How do we wend our way through that? It's like the world of coaching. Everybody and their dog's a coach. How do we figure out who's the right coach for us and who actually is going to deliver? So what would you say in this realm?
Well, I think those of us who are trained are in professional associations. So we actually have to be to practice. So I would say in your country, maybe go to look for several professional associations, healing associations or herbal associations. You can do it that way. But the wonderful thing is now you don't need to see somebody face to face. So we know that healing works, transcends time and space. So it doesn't matter if you're in America. I have clients all over the world. It doesn't matter if you're in Japan. You can still treat on the internet. Now, I know some people prefer face-to-face. I do understand that. But it is possible perfectly. It's equally as effective, actually, to do it online. So that is another way of doing it.
That's fascinating, especially because I don't know about how other people think of it, but when you're talking about, for instance, our biofield or our energy field and so forth, I always think of it as like pretty close to me, right? Not something that you can tap into from across the world. And I know intellectually how that works, but it just kind of always seems a little odd to me that that's something that can be accessed remotely, and that our energy reaches that far, for lack of a better term. So there's lots of things that I'd love to ask you, but right now, in terms of your work now, what is some of the hardest things for you in your business now that you're, a little older? You're not very old, but a little older, and what's some of the things that are more gratifying or wonderful for you in your work now?
I think one of the hardest things for me was marketing. To be honest with you, I found that very difficult. So, creating the content, delivering the workshops, things, fine, within my sphere, and, not a difficult thing to accomplish, but it was more the marketing. And when I was in Asia, so I worked mostly in Japan and Taiwan of late, before 2020. I had a promoter. And so I didn't have to think about that. I didn't have to think about social media. I didn't have to, work with that area of things. It was just done for me. I would prepare my material, I'd turn up, I'd do my work and then go. And then suddenly in 2020, it changed. And it's like, oh, okay. And much as, yes, there are so many gifted marketers that you can work with, but finding the right one. And this is, coming back to you saying finding the right healer, finding the right herbalist, for example, finding the right marketer for you. Yeah. Because they may be marvelous for somebody else, but maybe not so good for you. Exactly. And so it was like, that was a real, it was difficult. I went through, I tried several who were fabulous, but just didn't work for my business. And I think finally from, going with my intuition as well and saying, no, this is not working. That's another thing. I found it quite difficult to say, it's not working. Shall we part ways? That was a difficult one. Yes. But then, because, you just hang on too long. You just think, no, it's going to work. It's going to work. So coming back into my intuition and saying, no, this is not the right way to do it. I have finally found someone who I work really well with, and we've been working together for maybe a year or something, which is great. Awesome. So yes, the marketing was for me the most difficult. Yeah.
And it is for many people. And not only finding the right person, but actually learning how to do marketing and sales, because most people don't have to promote themselves day to day. And for many people, especially women, promoting ourselves is a big psychological barrier. Putting ourselves out there and saying, you should buy me, you should trust me, I can help you. Yes, you should give me money because yes, I am, able and can help you. And asking for what we want and doing self-promotion and not being all weird about it and dealing with approval issues, because most people have approval issues, and getting over that. Thank goodness as we age, that typically for most people reduces that whole desire to be a people pleaser and to give our power away and say, oh, well, whatever you want and so forth. But yeah, learning how to actually run a business can be very challenging. And the sales and marketing is often the biggest challenge for most people. So for you, your solution was to try a number of people until you found someone who was in alignment with how you wanted to present yourself and be in the world and your brand and your voice and so forth. And now that person is helping you with that. What's been the thing that's the most surprisingly wonderful for you in this last year of business, let's say?
Well, again, I do feel, I'm just going to finish off with the marketing side. I do also feel that you need to know something about it as well. I'm sure you probably feel that too. So it's very easy to hand it over and think, I can do this bit. In the past, it's worked handing it over. But often it doesn't quite work. You do have to have some idea before you then say, now can you, do more here. So that was a big lesson. That was a huge lesson to think, I didn't want to do it, but I just thought I need to. What's been the good in the last year? I think it's funny. I went to an art exhibition with a friend, and it was on the gut-brain connection. And this was in August, mid-August. And my friend was incredibly supportive, and she said, do you know what, Charlotte, I think you should give a talk in this art gallery, because there was a little theaterette associated with it. And I thought, okay. I think the exhibition was on for another maybe 2.5 weeks, so I didn't have long. And then I suddenly thought, I'm doing it. That's it. I'm going to do it for myself. Rather than expecting someone else to promote me, no, I'm doing it myself. So I did. And I did it within, I think by the time I got the marketing ready and whatever else, it was a week to go. So it was like, oh my God, how am I going to get people in? But we did get people in, and it was absolutely fantastic. And then from there, I thought, okay, let's make it a series, a gut series. So we did art of the gut for the first one, psychology of the gut for the second one. I'm going to do emotion of the gut next year. And they were face-to-face events. But I actually took control, and I thought, no, I'm doing it. And I basically did everything. But I was actually quite proud of myself, because I don't like the marketing side. And I thought, well, great. And in the future, do I want to hand that aspect over? Of course I do. Absolutely. Yeah. But at least I've done it. Yes. And I think that sometimes getting in and doing things that you really don't want to do, aspects of your business that you would much rather not do, I think if you can have the courage to just go, just do it, just take a big breath and do it, then it really changes the energy. And I feel that it really shifted the energy in my business. And so it's sort of going in a slightly different direction now because of it.
Interesting. So a couple of aspects in that. One is absolutely there's a big difference between abdication and delegation. And what many of us do when we don't want to do something is abdicate it. We think we're delegating it, but we don't. We don't set them up for success. We don't know how to manage the process because, like you said, we haven't done it ourselves. So we don't know if it's on track or off track. And we can't abdicate to someone else to be our being in the world. They can carry out and amplify that, but we still have to define what that is. What is our voice? What is our message? What is our purpose? How do we want to be perceived and serve in the world? Then we can start to bring people in to support that. But so I think that's a really valuable lesson. I love that you just said yes again, another one of those kind of yes moments. And I also heard in this and many of your comments, how much you tap into your intuition and use that to help you make decisions. So give us a couple of ideas or examples of how people can do that more for themselves. How do we tap into our intuition more? How do we learn to trust it more and use it to help us with decisions?
Well, again, I would say still the mind. So whether you're using the oils, whether you're using the herbs, whether you're grounding or going for a walk or whatever you're doing, that's one of the main things. But then the other thing is to catch your first thoughts, because often our intuition tells us initially or straight away how can I say what's going on? So for example, you walk into a room, maybe somebody has their back to you, and you immediately just have that sense, that feeling, whether you're going to get on with that person or not. And then often what happens is we override it and we go, oh no, I'm sure it's fine. You sort of dismiss what you first felt. And then, maybe months down the track, become friends or something, and then something really alarming goes wrong, and you haven't listened to that voice that says, yes, you can be friends, but then deal with your boundaries at the beginning, maybe, rather than waiting and then there's a problem. So I would say get used to tuning in, taking a couple of breaths, taking in that first feeling, that first thought. And sometimes, yes, it can be that intuition or that so-called intuitive feeling may be filtered through your beliefs, which is what we talked about earlier. It may be. But at least if you start to tune into it, the body often tells you whether it's a true intuitive feeling or it's not. Or it's a little bit sort of off kilter. So yes, I would say start with that. And I use intuition a lot in my business. So with the biofield consulting, the idea, what I do is I read people's energy. So I read individuals' energy, but also businesses' energy. So I'll go into a business and I'll feel or perceive the energy. Where are the blocks? Are they having a problem with communication? Is the team, for example, finding that the boss micromanages? Or, I can pick up those sort of energies or that information through an energy field. And people can, and it's just a matter of practicing. So just knowing it's possible and then practicing it, knowing that we do all have biofields, it does have a lot of information within that energy, and it's just a matter of picking it up. It is invisible, doesn't even look, it is invisible, but we can perceive it.
It's fascinating. So part of it, what I hear you saying is, one, listen to the initial reactions and responses that we have within us, because often then our thinking comes in and clutters things up. And as you said, sometimes it can be hard to discern, or especially initially, the difference between an intuitive nudge and a limiting belief, or a belief that's getting in the way. And so really playing with it and practicing with it to see, where does intuition live in my body and in my energy versus my beliefs? Where does that come from, so that we can play with it and practice with it? I once did a little experiment, and I haven't done it for quite a while, but I think I should do it again soon, of going to a city. I was going somewhere to speak, I think, and I decided I was going to find my hotel without using GPS. A big city, I forget where it was, Denver or something like that. And so I literally just followed my intuition. Turn left here. Okay, no, go straight. No, go straight longer. Okay, now turn right, and so forth. And I got to a point where my doubt was starting to creep in. I didn't have I had free time, so I was okay to play with this. My doubt was starting to creep in, and it's like, you're probably nowhere near it. Stop and ask for directions. So I stopped and I asked someone where it was. It was 2 blocks from where I was. And had I just carried on, I would have got there on my own. But I let doubt kind of come in and stopped, and but it was a really fascinating experience and experiment. And so part of it is experimenting with listening to those things and following through on them. I have a client right now, I was just talking to her yesterday, who is wants to go forward with a partner in a business that she's creating, and has some concerns. And I said, well, what was your initial intuition? And she paused and she kind of hummed and hawed and talked about how, they're so aligned and they're this. And I said, what was your initial intuition? Because they're quite a ways down the path now. They've been talking about and dreaming and ideating this business for almost a year. What was your initial intuition? It was like, it's not going to happen. And she's now in a situation where this person is very likely not going to leave their job and partner with them. And she can see that clearly, but she's now got all this vested time in. And so it's a little hard for her to let go of that. Had she listened to that original knowing, then she would have chosen a different path. But it's really challenging to trust that is our knowing, that is something other than our fear, doubt, and insecurity. But practicing, just playing with it, allowing it, making space for it, can help grow that. So there's so many more things we could talk about, but tell us a little bit more about, speaking of honing gifts and gifts, tell us a bit about your gift for our listeners.
Oh, yes. So I've got an energy wellness pack or toolkit, and basically it's got de-stress meditation in it. It's also got an energy tracker, because obviously, as we said at the beginning of the podcast, if you don't have energy, then you're not going to get anywhere. You know, you need energy for everything in life. So we've got an energy tracker. We've also got a botanical bath guide. So basically, how do you have the most luscious bath that's very relaxing and, just very some can be innovating, some can be relaxing. So yes, I would, that's our gift for today.
Awesome. So it's the Energy Rebalance Toolkit. And to get that, you can both go to the link that's in the show notes to the vault, where we have Charlotte's information, so you can reach out to her, but we'll also get that shortly, and her gift, so that you can go and download that, get that 10-minute meditation, as you saw earlier in the show. It's very relaxing and very supportive. And those other guides to try out something new to help you with balancing your energy and accessing your intuition and being present to and aware of what are those stories that we're telling that are supporting and which ones aren't. So go to the vault. Not only can you access Charlotte's gift, beautiful gift, but you can also go and get gifts from all of our other speakers, because they're all there in the vault, and you can go and download any and all of them that you want. So please do opt in. Where can people find you, Charlotte? How can they get access to you?
Probably the easiest is through my website, which is consummatehealth.com. But also, if you want to email me, then info@consummatehealth.com.
Beautiful. Awesome. And as she mentioned earlier, she can work remotely. So those of you who are curious about your business's energy, or how to inspire and support your own energy and or your physical well-being, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual well-being, then you can reach out to Charlotte and get that holistic kind of approach to the wholeness of you as a human being. So before we wrap up, I'll give you the last word here in terms of some advice. What I would love to say for those of you who are listening is, if you are in that place of trying to decide what's next for you, where do I go? What are my dreams? We talked about, not really being aware of what are my dreams now that I'm not the CEO or the stay-at-home mom or the accountant, or all of the ways that we've defined ourselves in the past that were simply roles, not our purpose. We often conflate the two in our society. But who are you now? What is your purpose now? And what are you going to create for your next chapter in life, your next 20, 30, maybe even 40 years? We're living longer, healthier, and we need to be really conscious, or it supports us to be really conscious about creating that next chapter. So that's what the Clarity Compass workshop is for, to help you clarify your vision for that next chapter for you, to help you figure out your purpose now that you are not who you've been your whole life. Now what? And to really create a practical go forward plan for you for whatever that next chapter is for you. If it's create a mobile lifestyle, or a side hustle, or a global empire, or whatever it may be for you, that's a beautiful incubator for you to determine and act on what's next for you. So check out the Clarity Compass workshop. You can go to my website, maturepreneur.world, and there will be information coming there soon if it's not already up for you about that workshop. It's virtual, so you can join us virtually from anywhere in the world if you're ready to step into what's next for you. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Please do subscribe and like and share and just show me lots of love, and love to all of our guests as well. What's a piece of advice you'd like to leave people with, Charlotte, about really overcoming those limiting beliefs and stepping into who they want to be next?
To understand or remember that you are incredibly powerful, that society tends to put us in a box, and we are not limited by that. We should not be limited by that box. And I think just always remember that in your life. And there are actually not really limitations. The limitations are within you and sometimes within your mind. So step out of that and just enjoy the journey.
Beautiful. And I would just say get support with stepping outside of that if it's not easy to do on your own. Thank you so much for being here. And I couldn't agree more. You, my listeners and my viewers, are incredibly powerful and incredibly needed. So please do step into what's next for you, what your next yes is. Thank you for being here, Charlotte. I appreciate you and the work you do. Bye for now, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you left a comment and subscribed. And I encourage you to apply one aha from this interview right away so you can turn your wisdom into wealth and your contribution into positive change. Bye for now.